house of the Lord. Amen. Truly our Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting. His truth shall endure all generations. We serve a God who is worthy of all of our praise. Beloved, I said he is worthy of all of our praise. He's been too good to us in spite of us. Therefore, we ought to worship him. I don't know about you all, but I look forward to coming into the house of the Lord. I look forward to it. It's good for my soul. And the thing is, if I believe that I can go without coming together with the saints of God, and that I'll be all right. In other words, if I forsake the assembling of ourselves together and convince myself that I can take on whatever the world throws at me, I'm in trouble. Therefore, I look forward when the Lord allows us to come together one more time. Because you think about it, we get together on Sunday morning. We have a midweek study. But you around heathens all week long. Influencing you, impacting you, when it should be you influencing them. So you ought to look forward and don't take for granted when the Lord allows you to be in the presence of the people of God one more time. Turn with me to the book of Colossians, chapter 1. To the book of Colossians, chapter 1. I want to begin at verse 12 of Paul's letter to the church of Colossae. Chapter 1 and verse 12. Giving thanks unto the Father, which hath made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light. Hallelujah. Who hath delivered us from the power of darkness and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Amen. Beloved, I want to talk briefly this morning about true thanksgiving. About true thanksgiving. Paul here in this chapter expresses his desire for the people of God to grow. It ought to be the aim of every preacher, the aim of every pastor, that God has both called and gifted. His aim ought to be to increase God's people. It is to increase God's people. It should not be to excite them. It's not about motivating them or inspiring them, and all of that is well and good and has its proper place. However, if you are not growing, being motivated means nothing. The thing is, you can be motivated to get out the boat. But if you don't have Christ, you will soon sink. You can be inspired to walk through the door. But if you don't have Christ, it won't take long before you're heading for the exits. Well. Beloved, it's important for us to grow in Christ Jesus. I told us last week that you need to sit down somewhere. That before you can walk, before you can lead, before you can serve, you need to spend some time at the feet of Jesus. Learning, feasting from him. It's necessary that we grow. And Paul in this text expressed that it was his great desire that they should grow. He tells us in verse 9 that he does not cease to pray for them, and that he desires for them that they be filled with knowledge and spiritual understanding. Paul was a pastor. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Paul was a pastor's pastor. That's right. That's right. Paul's entire aim was to preach Christ to the people, because Paul believed that there was nothing that you can face in this life that Christ can't handle. Yeah. He said, why do I need you to grow? He said, I need you to grow in knowledge and understanding so that you might walk worthy of the Lord. That you might walk worthy of the Lord, producing much fruit, proving, in other words, what is that good and acceptable will of God. He said, I want you to grow up because I want you to look like who you belong to. I'm going to get to my text in a minute. Paul said it was important. It was important. But he said also, so that you might be strengthened, in verse 11. He said that you might be strengthened because you need to have strength to endure long suffering. Amen. With patience and with joy. It's inevitable for us to deal with suffering in this life, with disappointments, with downfalls and pitfalls. There will be periods in your life where you'll be on your back. There'll be periods in your life where you will deal with brokenness. There will be periods in your life where you will deal with loneliness. Help me, Holy Spirit. And Paul is saying that you need to be able to go through these times with patience and with joy. Well, Paul, how do I do that? My patience is already short, especially when it comes to people. Because people, I feel like, just abuse my time. My patience is tough when it comes to that. At least with sickness or trouble, it don't have no sense of my time. You telling me that I got to have patience and I got to deal with it with joy in my heart. In other words, what Paul is instructing us, he is telling us that you have got to get to a place in your maturation with Christ that your joy is in front of your trouble. Your joy needs to be in front of your trouble. In other words, if my joy is not based on where I'm at, what I have, who's with me, where I'm going, then when all of that stuff gets turned upside down, my joy will still remain. Beloved, if you know that there is a sovereign God who sits on his throne and never gets disturbed by life's circumstances. See, I like how it speaks of God's posture on his throne. It always speaks of him sitting on his throne. Even Isaiah even testified that in the year the king Uzziah died, he said, I saw the Lord high and lifted up. His train did fill the temple. The Lord sitting on his throne. And the thing is this was a time that was trying for the people. And yet God was sitting down. Beloved, you need to know that you serve a God that just because your mind is running crazy, just because worry has hit your emotions and got them all out of whack, you serve a God who's just sitting on his throne, undisturbed, unsurprised, and unanxious. Why? Because he holds the whole world in his hands. See, when you understand that this God is the same God that you call your Father, this all-powerful and sovereign being who can do what he wants to do and how he wants to do it, this sovereign God who even the devil must ask his permission, is the same God that you have the privilege of calling Father. And he in turn calls you his child. See, when you understand all of that, baby, when trouble rises, your joy won't falter. When your enemies come up upon you to eat up your flesh, you know your Father will cause them to stumble and fall. These types of things, knowing this about your God, will allow you to have joy. Paul said, because of all this, you ought to give thanks. He says you ought to give thanks. Beloved, we need to be a people that can bless the name of Jehovah regardless of what is going on in your life. I need you to be in a place where you can be laying in the hospital and you just got bad news that the test was positive. And I need you to be able to lay there and look up at the physician and say, thank you, Jesus. I need you to be at a place where you can lose your job. And you didn't have a nice little nest egg to fall back on. And your mortgage is due.
He'll pay it.
Your rent is due.
He'll pay it. Yes, he will.
Electric and gas.
Come on.
I need you to be at a place where you can still say, he is worthy to be praised. I need you to be at that place. Because see, the truth and the reality of it all is you are not confused about who the supplier is. It ain't your employer. That ain't the supplier. That ain't nothing but a conduit. He's just using your job to get his blessings through to you. He's not the supplier. That's not the supplier. That's not the supplier. The doctor ain't the healer. The doctor is just an instrument. He's just a vessel. The doctor can say you got 3 weeks. But God said you got 3 years. That's what I'm telling you. You got to get to that place.
My God.
You got to get there.
Yeah.
And I got news for you. Listening to motivational speeches won't get you there. Listening to inspirational, feel-good messages that speak to my emotions and not speak to my condition. Help me, Holy Spirit. It's not going to get me there. Beloved, let me
Yes,
get
sir.
my text before I just start running.
Yes, sir.
But this is what Paul is saying. He says, this is why I prayed for you. Beloved, as the under shepherd of this house, this is why I prayed for you. This is why I face down at the altar week after week. This is why I spend time with the Lord in meditation about what to say to you on Sunday morning. Because I want you to get to a place where you can say, greater is he than my circumstance, than my pain, my situation, my brokenness, my anxiety. He's greater than all of that. Because that's where you're going to get peace on earth. That's when you're going to get to the place where you're going to enjoy a little bit of heaven right now. everything in your heart.
Yes, sir.
And I know and I understand that God is in the blessing business. Oh, yes, He is. And morning by morning, He gives me new mercy. And He gives new blessings. He seems to show up on my behalf time and time. I know He does that. And all of that is enough to make you run and make you shout and make you want to go tell your story. I get all of that because I agree the Lord is good and His mercy is everlasting. But baby, these are things that you perceive to be good. These are things that you can see with your own eyes. I can look at my bank account and say that's good. I can look at my address and say that's good. I can look at my circle of friends and say that's good. The places I get to visit and the food that's on my table, and I can say all of that is good. But what about when there's scarcity? What about when the money's funny? What about when I got to stand all by myself? And people are looking at me and are wondering how? The thing is what they don't know is what Paul is saying is they thought that your joy was built in those things. They thought that your joy was just in the blessings of God. But Paul had some news for us. He said there's two reasons that you need to be giving thanks unto the Lord. He said the first one is He made you meet for an inheritance. That's good news. Cut across. But He made you meet for an inheritance. Paul, what are you saying to me? He said, I need to remind you that this blessing is not something that's just laid up in store for you. But He's saying that you meet for your inheritance right now, at this very moment. Just because there's riches and mercies over in glory that's laid up for me. What you got to know and be reminded of is that it belongs to me right now. There's some good news. He said you need to know that you've been made meet. You've been made suitable. You've been made fit for your inheritance. And this wasn't something that you earned on your own. It wasn't something that you got for coming to church every time. You didn't get this for praying to the east 4 times a day. You didn't get this from wearing fringes and praying with your head covered. You didn't get this from your religious duties and your religious ceremonies and your dress and your works. But I'm telling you that God made you meet wondering what the inheritance is. The inheritance is heaven on high. Is God all right? So Paul, what are you saying to him? Paul is saying it does not matter if you were saved 30 years ago or if you were saved on yesterday. The Bible says that you meet right now. I don't care if the Lord wills it, if you die today. If the Lord decides to take me right now and take me over the River Jordan, you got to know that it ain't what I've done and it ain't what I've been, but there is a crown that's fitted for my head. Ain't God all right? You got to understand that your thanksgiving, it comes from the fact that it's not how good I've been, but it's simply because the grace of my God is the Lord all right. Because if I'm honest with myself and I look back over my life, and if I look and I count all the things that I've earned on my journey, what I deserve is not heaven and glory, but what I deserve is to live eternity in a burning hell. But the good news is he saved me yesterday, so I'm going home to be with the Lord. Thank God all right. I'm reminded of a man on a cross that was hanging there next to my Jesus. And Jesus said to him, he said, this day thou shalt be with me in paradise. And the Lord all right. The man just 5 minutes ago was a thief. The man was a sinner. The man was a soldier of devil. But now that he met Jesus, he's a son of the true and living God. How was I made for the master's use? My Bible tells me that I was covered in the blood of the Lamb. Thank the Lord all right. And not only will I get my crown of righteousness, but these hands which were workers of iniquity, these hands that were doing my own will, these hands that were fulfilling my lust with desires, when I make it over, he's going to put a ring on my finger. Thank God all right. This body that I use for my own good, this body that I'll use for my own good, this body when I get over there, the Lord is going to clothe me in my lonely life. I gotta quit. Yes, sir. Y'all messed my message all up. God made you meet for the master's use. Didn't he do it? Aren't you glad he didn't leave you to yourself? Aren't you glad that when he came by your house, he didn't skip you over and go on to your neighbor's house? But God said, in the election of his grace, that my child, there's nothing you can say about him. There's nothing that he's done that can make me take my love. When Paul said that there's nothing that he regrets no life, I told him there's nothing you can do, my enemies can do, that will separate me from the love of God. thankful for. We're talking about what the Lord has done for me lately. I can't see no good in my life. I can't see the Lord moving in my life. But baby, I got news for you. If you call him Father, hey Lord. If you call him Father, and then he answers you right on time, you got something to shout for. You got something to lift up holy hands. Open your mouth. I'm sorry. I ain't got time to be breaking the phone with people for me. I ain't got time to be saying stuff just cause it sounds nice. I ain't got time to be quoting cliches just because I'm in church. But when I say if the Lord doesn't do anything else, anybody know he's done enough? He's done enough. He's done enough. What has he done for you? He cleaned me up. He's done it. He's done enough. He's done enough. What qualifies you? What qualifies you for glory is to be a son, to be a daughter, to be a child. What qualifies you? Beloved, I know religion has taught you so much, but what qualifies me is I'm his child. How do I know I'm his child? Because his spirit bears witness with my spirit that I am a child of the king. And when you can't get happy off of that, then I don't know what you ain't gonna let Christ get no glory for. Because when we get there, it's gonna be good to see Mama. I wanna see you Hallelujah.